Roger. Nice to be in orbit.
We have followed in their footsteps to get us where we are today.
Good morning and welcome to America's spaceport here in Florida. This is a live look at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where Crew-9 is in the process of suiting up for their mission. Today's T0 is 1:17 and 21 seconds PM Eastern Time. That's when a Dragon spacecraft sitting on top of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket that you can see right there will launch to the International Space Station. Crew-9 is a continuation of regular crewed flights from U.S. soil to station as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. What a beautiful shot outside as we circle Launch Complex 40. I'm NASA's Daryl Nail, and this is the official launch broadcast of Crew-9. With me to help commentate to what's happening this morning is our special guest, NASA astronaut Sunita Cardman. Zena, so good to have you here with us for what is hopefully going to be a great launch today.
Thank you, Daryl. Good morning, and good morning, everyone tuning in with us. I'm so grateful to be here.
And we are very grateful to have you here as you look at the launch pad now. Such a great shot by our flight operations team here at Kennedy. The mission today is a new configuration for NASA's Commercial Crew program as we go back into the suit-up room. We are flying one commander and one mission specialist, a crew of 2 instead of a crew of 4 as originally planned. Now, the reason is to use those 2 empty seats to return astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. They flew up to the ISS in June, but remained on the International Space Station to prioritize their safe return. Meanwhile, their Starliner spacecraft, which had technical issues during a test flight, returned to Earth uncrewed earlier this month and returned successfully. And we'll have more on that in just a bit. Today, the crew's ride to space is the Dragon Freedom spacecraft, its 4th flight to space. As we look inside the suit-up room at the operations and checkout facility here at the Kennedy Space Center, we see both the astronaut and the cosmonaut sitting in their seats inside the suit-up facility. They've got their suits on, and now, Zena, of course, it's time to check them out.
That's right, Daryl. This is the first time that the crew have gotten in their suits on launch day. Of course, this is not the first time they've been in their suits. We spend a lot of time training and practicing in these suits so that we are ready to go on launch day. But this is the first of multiple checkouts of the suits that will actually take them to the International Space Station. It's great to see.
You can tell they're a little puffed up. When the helmet goes above the chin and the mouth area, you know that they're being pressurized, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're doing leak checks in these seats. And so it's great to see Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov here in suits that are looking good. When they pressurize, they get a little bit stiffer. They're actually about the same pressure as a volleyball.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's a nice little factoid.
Yeah.
Well, over the next 4.5 hours, we will walk you through this detailed process and show you all the action live as it's happening from suit-up room all the way to liftoff and then in orbit. But first, I want to tell you a little background information about Sunita Cardman, our co-host today. Zena was selected by NASA as a member of the 2017 Turtle astronaut class. She completed 2 years of training as an astronaut candidate. Leading up to today's mission, she was part of Crew-9 and trained extensively with the team before the flight was adjusted to 2 crew members. As you can see, this is video of her doing that training. Zena is also a geobiologist. She earned her bachelor's degree in biology and her master's degree in marine sciences, both from the University of North Carolina. There, she also researched geobiology and geochemical cycling in subsurface environments such as caves. She also worked with NASA and supported field tests in Canada, Idaho, and Hawaii, and has been on multiple Antarctic research expeditions. And there you are in Antarctica, looking a little bit cold,
That's
but
exactly
vibrant
right.
nonetheless.
Yes, in some ways a very different environment than the one that I am training to work in now. But it's also, I think, really exciting to see a continuation of scientific research in remote environments and research that is collaborative and uses people who are not necessarily the scientists themselves actually doing the research, just like Nick and Alex are going to do on ISS.
And you found actually a lot of similarities with training to go to a place as remote as Antarctica and similar to space.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Of course, the reason that we're going to these places is to do research and for exploration, but it also takes an entire team of people to get us there. We also need to do training on maintenance, how to live and work in this environment and not just do the research.
All right, as you look here at Commander Nick Hague, I want to talk a little bit about him. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew-9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013. This will be his second space flight to the International Space Station. In 2018, he and his Soyuz crewmate experienced a catastrophic rocket booster malfunction after launch. They were forced to abort, but landed safely. 5 months later, Hague launched on another Soyuz and served as flight engineer for expeditions 59 and 60, and of course, a safe mission to the ISS. He spent a total of 203 days in space and performed 3 spacewalks. The Kansas native is a test pilot and a distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the Space Force in 2021 and is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons. Nick is certainly ready for this role, a role, Zena, that you had trained for, but a switch was made.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Nick is going to be the commander of this flight today. This will be his second long duration mission to the International Space Station, but as you just mentioned, his 3rd launch to space. I'm really excited for him. And actually, his crewmate on that Soyuz that aborted will be joining him on the International Space Station.
How about that? Well, they'll be reunited after their unfortunate circumstance on that first flight, but they did make it to space and they did do some great while they were on that particular mission.
That's exactly right. And this is really a testament to these systems work when we need them to.
Indeed. Well, as we mentioned, this is the suit up room. It's one of many rooms on the 3rd floor of the Neil A. Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building that make up crew quarters. The crew has been living and working in crew quarters for more than 2 weeks now. Let's talk a little bit now about his fellow crew member, Hague's fellow crew member, talking about Aleksandr Gorbunov. This is mission specialist Aleksandr Gorbunov's first time going to space. He studied engineering with qualifications in spacecraft and upper stages from the Moscow Aviation Institute. Gorbunov graduated from the military department with a specialty in operation and repair of aircraft, helicopters, and aircraft engines. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, he worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
That's exactly right. It's great to see Aleksandr looking good in his suit today. He has been an incredible asset to the team, Crew-9. I'm so grateful that I got to spend the last 18 months training with him and with Nick. They are both flying today in roles that are slightly different than the ones they originally trained for, but they are both ready to step up.
And talk a little bit about that, Zena. Initially, he was trained as pilot. Now he's in the commander position, but he also has to cover some of the responsibilities of the pilot, right? Because Gorbunov is still mission specialist, though he's also upped his level of ability for this mission as well.
Yeah, certainly. It is an unusual circumstance. So the mindset for today is that Nick Hague is the commander, and we're referring to it as a single seat commander. So he will be in charge of the vehicle, taking over the commander role it's a step up, certainly from the pilot role, but something that he's well trained to do. And the difference between transitioning from the pilot to the commander role is less of a difference than it would be to transition from mission specialist to pilot. And we simply did not have enough time to complete all of that training, although Alex is an incredible crewmate and a very capable cosmonaut. And so Alex will be flying in the seat that Nick was physically training in. Nick will be flying in the seat that I was physically training in, but they will both be sharing these duties. Alex will be backing up Nick in a lot of the duties, but Nick will be the commander of the spacecraft.
And a little more insight into the decision that you touched on that was made on a crew assignments once this mission was changed from a crew of 4 to a crew of 2. NASA Chief Astronaut Joe Acaba, of course, made the call to fly Hague as the spacecraft commander. Acaba had to balance flying a NASA crew member with previous spaceflight experience to command the flight, while also making sure that the agency maintains an integrated crew with a Roscosmos cosmonaut who can operate that agency's critical systems aboard station for continued safe station operations. So a lot went into that decision. And we heard from NASA leadership in the press conference yesterday, and they said, look, you know, we had to make that call of experience in which it leaned, but they said it was a very, very close call between you and Nick. Very, very close. But it went to the experience, and you've been a professional about this. You're here on the broadcast talking about it, which, you know, I got to commend you for that as well.
Thanks.
But they said, look, you're going to fly. You're going to get a mission, and it'll be soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a very privileged problem to have. If I can say, I don't know exactly when my launch to space will be, but I know that I will get there. That's a really great position to be in. I am here today to support my crewmates and to support the astronaut office and to support the International Space Station mission as a whole. As you just mentioned, it is really important to us that we maintain these international partnerships. It is an international space station. And so flying Aleksandr in that role enables that international partnership. It also facilitates my colleague Don Pettit and his seat launching on a Soyuz rocket just a few weeks ago. So they will all be together on the space station as an expedition crew. And I'm really proud to be supporting my crewmates here.
Well said. Back into the room here, you can see everyone who is in the room. We have some supporting astronauts. You see Shannon Walker there off to the left, Deputy Chief of the Astronaut Office. And you see the folks who are dressed up in black. Those are the SpaceX support team.
Yeah, that's exactly
It looks like
right.
Norm Knight made it back from Russia.
Yes, indeed.
Director of flight operations.
Yeah, Norm Knight there in the beige jacket. He was supporting the Soyuz launch just a few weeks ago, but made it back in time to be with the crew. It's really amazing to have his support as the head of the Flight Operations Directorate. And in the blue suit just behind Alex there is Kostya Borisov. He was a mission specialist on Crew 7, actually, and is here supporting Alex.
Right, and right between him, that's Luke Delaney. He's an astronaut, but he's in the SpaceX outfit there. There he is in his blue suit.
Luke Delaney, yes. So he is a member of the Flies class, the class just younger than the Turtles. And so it's been great to see him taking over this role. He is the astronaut support person, or ASP. So he will actually be riding in the Teslas with Nick and Alex and helping them get to the pad and get to their capsule safely. And then in between Luke and Norm Knight is Chaz Tacheny. He's our VITO, Vehicle Iteration and Test Office mission lead for Crew-9.
Zena, how long does it take for crews to train together for a launch, and what does that training entail?
Yeah, so as a crew, we are training for about 18 months together, and that training includes a lot of training in Hawthorne. As you see pictured here, this is Nick and Alex in Hawthorne, California, and we also have some simulators in Houston, Texas, training in the Dragon capsule itself. The large majority of our time is spent training for the International Space Station as opposed to our launch vehicle. But the launch vehicle is something that we don't train for until about the last 6 or 8 months of training before we get to the ISS. So it really takes a lot of work, a lot of practice so that on launch day, everything is very familiar.
There they are coming out of the hatch.
That's exactly
Doing
right.
that training you're talking about.
Yep. This training pictured here is for an unassisted egress in case they landed somewhere and rescue forces weren't immediately available to help them out of the capsule. So something that we practice for, but hope to never use.
Right.
But of course, as we know, it's always good to practice for unexpected situations.
And the red stuff, those are the life-preserving items.
That's right.
Supplies,
Yeah.
like a raft. And
There's a
some
life
flotation.
raft on board the Dragon. Exactly right.
Very good. And so, as you can tell, Zena has great knowledge and insight into the mission today and into spaceflight in general. And so, if you're watching right now, we want to invite you to participate in the show. If you'd like to ask a question over the next 4.5 hours, just jump on X, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. Send your question in.
Countdown T-minus 3 hours and 50 minutes. Suit leak checks are complete, and then side hatch is coming open imminently.
All right, good update there from the SpaceX launch director. 2 good suit leak checks, and they're opening up the hatch out at the pad. But again, hashtag Ask NASA. Use that on the platforms X, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, along with your question, and we will try and answer that question live. While they get ready to go here, take a few pictures and with some of the team and talk to the crew before they get ready to head out here. I want to talk a little bit more about what led to the configuration of this mission today. The other 2 astronauts who are not flying today, but will technically become part of Crew-9 and Expedition 72 when Nick and Aleksandr arrive to the ISS are, of course, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. Butch Wilmore, he has flown on 3 missions, performed 4 spacewalks, and flown in 3 spacecraft, Shuttle, Soyuz, and Starliner. And Sonny, she has flown on 3 missions, performed 7 spacewalks, and also flown in 3 spacecraft, Shuttle, Soyuz, and Starliner. Starliner arrived to the International Space Station on its test flight. This happened back in June, and we have video of it. There it is. You can see here Sonny and Butch gliding into the ISS for the welcome ceremony. Sonny's, of course, pumped as she was dying to get back onto the station. But after experiencing some technical issues with Starliner, NASA extended Butch and Sonny's stay on the ISS by weeks so teams could perform in-space and ground testing, along with holding agency meetings to review the data. During that time, the pair of astronauts conducted research and performed maintenance on the orbiting lab. But in early September, Starliner undocked without its crew from the ISS as a result of NASA's decision to prioritize astronaut safety over the test flight. And then roughly 6 hours after it pulled away from the International Space Station, as you can see here, just after midnight on September 7th, in this infrared video, you can see Starliner landing under parachutes at the White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. Successful touchdown there. Starliner performed a series of burns leading up to the successful touchdown back on Earth, and of course brought that 3-month test flight to a conclusion. And here's what Sonny and Butch had to say.
I was so happy it got home with no problems. We saw it fly away, and then we all got up. The whole crew got up at 3 in the morning, and we had it up on our iPads watching it land.
It was wonderful that it made it back. And the fact that we weren't on it didn't even come into mind at all.
We're here with our friends. We've got a ride home. And, we're looking forward to the next couple months and doing a lot of stuff for the International Space Station.
And so they are now, once we get everybody aboard here today, going to be part of Expedition 72 and have a lot of science work that they will do. They'll be up there for a while. But if everything goes as planned and they return with Nick and Aleksandr on a Crew Dragon, then they will be, fun fact, the first astronauts to fly 4 different spacecraft that have launched and returned to Earth.
That is a fun fact. Actually, really amazing. It's
hard to do.
It's difficult to do. Yes, that is quite the accolade. It's really actually incredible to me that I work with so many people, so many astronauts in our office who have now flown 2 different or 3 different types of spacecraft. And I mean, what a time to be alive that we have that many different spacecraft in operation. That's pretty neat.
It's a great point. And to your point, to talk about just how few astronauts that have done this. If we kind of change the qualification to which astronaut has flown 4 spacecraft previously and not put the qualifier of launching from Earth and returning to Earth, it goes to an astronaut who is in this room on a picture in the background. That's John Young, who flew, of course, Gemini, Shuttle, but then the Apollo Crew module.
That's
and
right.
The Apollo Lunar module.
That is truly amazing.
And he's in that picture, that photo there that you can see at the very top of the screen.
Yep, just above that Crew-9 patch. That's an amazing tie to history that this room and this building share. It's really, really special to get to suit up in this actual room.
And so this is a tradition here. There's Shannon Walker with the 2 crew members laying out the rules to a card game. This is a tradition that happens before the crew can leave the suit-up room. Someone plays the crew. This someone is the case. It's Shannon Walker, the deputy astronaut chief. She'll play the commander and crew member, and they will play until the commander loses. That way, the team gets their bad luck out of the way and can now move on with nothing but good luck through launch.
That's exactly right. I think spaceflight in general is full of traditions, especially on launch day. This is one of them that is just a really fun part of it. It's also a great thing to do. We have a lot of buffer built into that suit up timeline. And so I absolutely love that we get to do this tradition, get to take part in this tradition. The rules change a little bit. And so the chief or the deputy chief might make up something special specific to that crew. So you can imagine maybe the number 9 is going to feature heavily today or something like that. So the rules change a little bit every time. But yes, you're exactly right. The tradition is that we must play until the commander loses. So we'll see what happens. And yeah, it's great to see they're playing with a card deck that I actually made for them.
Oh, you did?
That's right.
Tell me about that.
It's well, I guess my last name is Cardman, and so it's, trying to live up to the name. But this is something that I've done now for crews that I work closely with. So I've worked closely in the past with Crew 4, Crew 5, now Crew 9, and it's a really fun way to send them off on their launch day. And it's been really neat to draw the crew members as the face cards, actually. So I've got.
Oh, that's cool.
Nick Hague as the king for each suit, and Aleksandr Gorbunov is the jack of each suit.
Any reason that you chose for those particular?
Well, that just happened to
just work out that way.
Yeah, I followed my instinct there. For Crew 5, it was fun because they had Anna, Koichi, Josh, and then I made Nicole the queen. Yeah, that's right. So their initials kind of lined up nicely with the face cards.
So do you happen to know, it looks like they're getting ready to start the game. Do you know what game they're going to play?
I don't know exactly the rules of today's game.
Well,
only Shannon Walker knows right now,
yeah.
And perhaps, hopefully, Nick and Alex as they're about to start playing.
She's been laying out the rules.
Yeah, it's fun to see them laughing with each other.
Yeah.
It must have been pretty funny. Yeah, this is something to me that just is really the human side of spaceflight.
Absolutely. And it's fun to get this insight. This isn't something that we saw in the past, although it was happening, all the way back to the shuttle missions. But now the astronaut office has said, hey, we'll share this with the public. I greatly appreciate it. We started doing this back in Crew 7, I believe.
That's right. Yeah. I love that we get to share this now. I think it's such a privilege to get to fly and represent our countries and the international partnership here. And the more of that story we can share with everyone watching, I think the better.
Seems like Shannon's trying to stretch out the time a little bit as she checked her
That's
watch.
a good sign, actually. I
Yeah,
think they must
that's
be
right, that's
doing
true.
well on time. We love having buffer in the timeline. It's nice to see some familiar faces in the background there. Some of the black SpaceX suits. Number 34 is Haley Esparza. She's the manager for all astronaut operations at SpaceX. And fun fact, she's been with every single crew to fly a Dragon since Bob and Doug.
Oh, how about that? Some great consistency there.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm taking from the body language that Hague may have lost right out of the gate.
Great, we're good to go. Got a good feeling for today.
So that didn't fill a lot of time, but hey,
But
you
hey,
got the
good
result
omens.
that you
We'll
wanted,
take
right?
it. That's right.
There you go. And you see the tether there on their suits. It's tethered to a box, a briefcase, I guess, as they call it.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that is and why they have to carry that around.
Yeah, this little suitcase, briefcase looking thing is actually a portable cooling unit. And these suits are quite warm. It's kind of like wearing a big plastic bag. It is meant to protect you from a lot of different things. But if you are not connected to the environmental control systems of the Dragon spacecraft, they can be quite warm, especially in Florida weather.
Right.
And
This isn't breathable fabric for good reason.
that's yes, all of the right reasons. Yeah. So until they get into their Dragon spacecraft, this is a nice way for them to maintain a happy, healthy body temperature.
All right. And there's a look at the doors at the bottom where the astronauts are headed. Now we have an opportunity to take some social questions that we just talked about. So are you ready, Zena?
Oh, yeah.
Excellent. All right. First up, Dustin Burnham asks on X, can you share a surprising or funny story about the preparations for this launch that highlights the human side of space exploration?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, man. As crew members training together for 18 months, we have a lot of opportunities to not only work together, but also travel together, and you get to see each other in many different circumstances. I can attest that Nick Hague is quite good at karaoke.
You don't say.
I do. Yeah, so that's what
Like he can really sing.
Oh, well, I would say he's very enthusiastic.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, I see. Is he the guy that he's always trying to get to the karaoke bar to sing? Or
Yeah,
does he kind of push it a little bit?
I think it's an especially nice tradition, for example, when we are training in a place like Japan, where this is one of our international partners, and what better place to do karaoke than in Japan?
No doubt. So we're looking outside the operations and checkout building at T-minus 3 hours, 38 minutes and counting. This is where family, friends, loved ones have gathered to say goodbye to their astronaut. And let me tell you, the license plate is ready for it, as is the SpaceX Teslas that will head out to the pad. Always a great little tradition that they do with the custom plate.
Yes, I love this tradition. All of the Teslas that have taken Dragon crews to their rocket have had a fun custom license from Haley Esparza, who just walked in front of the camera. She's the mastermind behind those license plates. I suspect this one is a Taylor Swift reference.
Ah, I'm glad you got that.
Uh-huh.
Well, you see the 3 Teslas that are going out there, Teslas 1 and 2. Of course, with just 2 crew members today, they'll be in one Tesla together.
That's right. It would be a lonely ride separate. So I'm glad they'll be together and listening to Pump It Up playlist on their way there.
Well, you can see this is now the hallway back inside the astronaut crew quarters, and some really fantastic artwork that you can see lines the hall there. This has been a recent addition to the hallway, and it's just some beautiful stuff there.
Yeah, I absolutely love this addition to such a historic place. And those doors, my goodness, it's amazing thinking how many crews, all of the people who have walked through those doors on their way to orbit.
All the way back to Gemini in the 60s. It has been a long time as we zip over. And, well, there's Rajachari, one of our astronauts, former crew members, is
Yeah,
out there helping out.
that's right. Rajachari, a classmate of mine, Turtle classmate, and the commander of Crew 3. And he is here as a family escort for Nick Hague.
Okay, so we're looking at the doors that are at the bottom of the elevator, and still haven't had the crew walk out of crew quarters, but there's a lot of stuff to do. They have a schedule. They want to keep to it. And they're going to walk out of there right on time.
That's right. Yeah, leading the way in that black suit there, I think she was number 11, is Katie Bishop. She is the closeout lead for today's mission.
Crew quarters is a pretty big place as you look into the hallway there. Talking about 26,000 square feet, and it takes up the entire third floor
Yeah,
and the west wing.
that is true. That's true. Yeah, not all of that is used as crew quarters specifically. It also includes a lot of other goings on. Oh, here we see the crew coming down the hallway. Oh my goodness.
Here they come. Crew-9 leaving the suit-up room and now on the move inside astronaut crew quarters.
This is a big moment, and there's so many people who have supported them in quarantine who are lined up in these hallways, wishing them well on their journey. You can see them waving goodbye as they get in these elevators.
Yeah. Aleksandr Gorbunov on the right, Nick Hague on the left, stepping into the elevator with Shannon Walker.
That's right. And that poster that you see lining the walls of the elevator are signed by so many of the people who have supported this mission here at KSC. It's really humbling to see those posters as you step into those elevators.
A very nice touch and a thumbs up as the elevator doors close. Now they're headed down to the first floor. And as they do so, since we're talking pre-launch traditions, and we had a few of them, here's another one. Both Nick and Aleksandr signing their mission patch inside crew quarters. The patch shows, of course, the trail of a rocket launching. And you can see a Falcon 9 in there with the number 9 on its beak, along with a crescent moon as its eye. That's a nod to the Falcon 9 rocket in the patch. And we'll have much more on this mission patch with a deeper dive into the design coming up later in the broadcast, which, you know, Zena, your team, when it was your team, all contributed to the design of this
That's
patch.
right. Yes. So this is a patch that I have so much affinity for, and I love the design. Nick and Alex will represent it well today.
And we'll have one astronaut and one cosmonaut. They will soon walk out of the doors here at the Neil A. Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building. So we are focused on the doors. There's Haley, I believe, right?
That's right. That's Haley, number 34, walking out.
You see the patches that the stickers that line the doors, a great tradition there.
Yes. One of
Crew
many
members.
reminders of all the history of this building. It's a moment of big anticipation. See in the blue suit on the right, Rajachari. They're supporting Nick Hague's family.
And Administrator Bill Nelson is here, NASA Administrator, of course.
Yeah, that's right. I
There
saw
at the
him
bottom corner
on the
in the
far
blue
right.
shirt. The doors are open on the Teslas. They've allotted about 25 minutes to the pad with a security escort that will lead the way. We've got a on-car camera. We'll follow them as they go out there, so we'll get to see the same things that the astronauts see on their first ride ever out to Launch Complex 40 this time, which has been certified for human space flight, a recent addition to the capability of that launch complex out there at the Space Force, the 45th Space Force Wing, the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Yeah, that's right. This is one of many historic aspects to this Crew-9 mission, and it's neat to have Nick Hague, who is the first person to launch as a Space Force member.
Ah, yes.
Of course, Mike Hopkins transitioned over to the Space Force while he was already on orbit. So he launched as Air Force, landed as Space Force.
An important distinction there, and I believe Nick said in his little crew pack, he's taking the Space Force flag.
Yeah, we get a really small volume of personal items, much of which we tend to take up with gifts. Oh, here they come.
There they are. Nick Hague, commander of Crew-9, with his crewmate, Aleksandr Gorbunov.
It's a big moment. Family and friends seeing their crew members
This way
in
to
their
space.
suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll have a chance here to say a few words with those who are closest to them.
Standing at a distance, of course, because the astronauts are quarantined for 2
That's
weeks
right, yeah.
prior to liftoff.
And their closest members of the family have been quarantining with them, but as we are actually getting ready to get on the rocket, we are taking all of the precautions possible.
What's this like for you, Zena, seeing your former crewmates in this moment?
Oh, gosh, at the same time, it is absolutely joyful and it is also surreal. It's really fun seeing people I know so well in their suits, ready to go. I know firsthand how well prepared they are. They've been doing not only all of the normal training for a mission like this, but additionally working really hard to make that final transition into these roles that they weren't originally planned for. I know that they're ready, and gosh, it's amazing. I know how many people have put a ton of work into this. I'm ready to see them get to the International Space Station and get going on a long expedition. And they'll have a few minutes here to say hello, say some words with their family. There's Haley letting them know it's time to move towards the Teslas. And we'll hopefully have one extra chance for families to come up to the window of the Teslas as they're ready to roll off to the pad. A few final cheers, some photos.
And now they are getting into the Tesla. And as Zena said, the doors will close, the windows will open, and they'll have a few more moments with their
That's
family
right.
and loved ones.
You can see them hooking back up to that cooling umbilical connected to their little personal briefcases. Get them some air on their way to the launch pad.
Switching from the handheld to the in-car system, right?
The handheld system is actually in the back behind their seats.
So it's all part of it. Okay.
Yeah, but they ditch the little cooling suitcase as they walk out, just less to carry.
Gotcha.
This moment is such a mix of emotions. I know families are all at once so proud of their loved one. It's also incredibly difficult to know that it's going to be a long time before you see them again. Of course, we have a lot of great communications assets. It's really easy to stay in touch, but it is nevertheless really challenging to be a family member on the other side of this. And as a crew member, you are feeling so excited for this launch that's about to happen. You're so ready for it, as this license plate says.
They are ready for it indeed. And you've been down there on the ground as an astronaut support person with these crew members as they've been getting ready to. You were there for Crew 4.
That's right. Yeah, I was the support person for Crew 4. I was a backup crew member for Crew 4 as well. I've been on most sides of this this barrier here. I've been there as a support person, riding in the Teslas with the crew to the pad. I've been a family escort. I've been there as effectively the family member for a crew member. So I've seen it from a lot of different sides. It's really, each one is challenging and humbling. So I know firsthand all the work that goes into something like this.
And they are off on their way to Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. You can see the crew driving away from the Neil A. Armstrong Operations and Checkout Building, and this will begin a roughly 20-minute drive with a full security escort across NASA's Kennedy Space Center, including the Vehicle Assembly Building. And there they are, the onboard camera. I just want to follow up on a note that you said. You've seen this from so many sides that by the time you get to space, you will probably be the most highly trained astronaut to ever do a crew launch.
Well, I don't know about that, but I will be ready for it as well. That's for sure.
All right. Well, while we've got the astronaut and cosmonaut in their vehicles headed to the pad, let's hear from them now. And let's start with Commander Nick Hague, who spent 5 months in Iraq in 2004 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Let's listen more from the test pilot from Kansas.
The point of the human exploration of space is to benefit everyone on Earth.
My name's Nick Hague, and I'm the commander for NASA's SpaceX Crew-9 mission to the International Space Station. Space is really hard. It's dynamic, it's unpredictable, and we've seen that play out over the last several months. But that's no different than the way it's always been. And so it's phenomenal to be part of a team that you see them respond to that and throw themselves at these new challenges and figure out ways to make it happen. It just makes you really proud to be part of the NASA team. I grew up on a farm out in western Kansas, looking up at the night sky, staring at the stars, dreaming about exploring space. At some point when you're growing up, the childhood dream of going to space transitions to a professional ambition. And for me, that time was at the test pilot school at Edwards Air Force Base. I've been to the space station before. My first launch was not quite successful, and we aborted about 2 minutes into the flight. So what was supposed to be a 200-day mission ended up being a 20-minute mission. I was able to try again 5 months later.
And we are on the road after hearing some really wonderful words from Commander Nick Hague. I like the part about him looking up at the sky and dreaming about space and translating that to a professional ambition. And here he goes. We also want to invite you to jump in to the conversation we're having right here on air. Send us your questions with the hashtag AskNASA on the platforms Facebook, X, YouTube, and Twitch. Astronaut Zena Cardman is here, and she is answering your questions and doing a great job of it. And so our next question is, well, Luke, who is just 8 years old, asks on Facebook, how tall is the rocket?
Oh, the Falcon 9 rocket is a little over 200 feet tall.
So that's roughly 20 stories if you think of a 20-story building, you know, a
Yeah,
hotel or a
that's right.
condominium.
That's
I
right.
mean, it is a really tall rocket.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So the crew will be taking a long elevator ride up to the top of the launch tower before they can walk across the crew access arm. And at the bottom of the rocket, they'll have a chance to peer up at it from below. And at the top, they'll have a chance to peer over the rail and gaze out at the view. It is really actually amazing to stand on top of one of these launch towers and look out at Kennedy Space Center, many different launch towers here. But today, this one on Launchpad 40, Launch Complex 40, is going to take Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov to the International Space Station.
Another question on social now coming from Nico Fuentes. He asks on X, why is Crew-9 launching from a different launch pad?
This is a launch pad that SpaceX has used to launch Falcon rockets from before. This is the first time that we will have actually crew, so people launching on a rocket from this launch pad. And I think it's great. Now we have more options available. This adds some flexibility to the launch schedule. We have more and more rockets launching every week, and things can get a little complex. We have to not only abide by traffic laws, so if one rocket is launching, another one is not able to launch nearby, but we also have to dodge weather, as we are keeping an eye on today. And so having more than one launch pad is really helpful in maintaining some flexibility.
Initially, Crew-9 was supposed to launch on 39A, but they made the switch due to a number of factors to 40 and did a lot of work to get it ready.
Exactly right. Yeah, actually, this launch pad was not yet even human rated for their original launch date in mid-August.
2 years later, and they are ready for this day. We are now passing Kennedy's iconic vehicle assembly building. As you see, as we pull out the shot here, this is where NASA will stack its Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft for Artemis 2, sending 4 astronauts around the moon. It'll be the first crewed mission of NASA's Artemis campaign to establish a long-term presence on the lunar surface for science. And there you see it. What a beautiful shot of the VAB, and there you see at the bottom right the crew on their way. Fabulous.
Oh my goodness, what perspective. Wow.
Well, speaking of Artemis 2, the Space Launch System core stage rocket, well, Zenit made its final stop to Kennedy Space Center in Florida before it's going to get ready for launch. The commander of the Artemis 2 mission was in New Orleans back in July for the big move to KSC. And let's listen in to him now with a closer look at what's next for the SLS.
Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, standing here at the Michoud Assembly Facility in Louisiana. And behind me, our Space Launch System core stage is on the move. That booster back there is going to power me, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen around the moon on Artemis 2. For the last 3 years, technicians have been manufacturing and assembling our 212-foot-tall Space Launch System core stage. In July, the core stage made the trek on NASA's Pegasus barge and shipped to the Exploration Ground Systems team at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The core stage rocket's arrival now puts the biggest piece of hardware for Artemis 2 shipped to Kennedy at the Vehicle Assembly Building. It joins the SLS rocket's twin 5-segment solid rocket boosters and the Orion spacecraft, already undergoing testing and checkouts at the spaceport. That's a look at your Artemis Moon Minute.
The Space Launch System, with its 2 propellant tanks and 4 RS-25 engines, is the only rocket that can send the Orion spacecraft, astronauts, and supplies to the moon on a single mission. And as we continue to watch the crew here, they're taking that curve. That is pad 39B. And that's a live look as they are passing that pad right now. Testing is in the works for the Artemis program there. Last month, teams at Kennedy Space Center.
15 minutes. Advanced team is complete with their actions and ready for crew arrival.
Okay, that's a good milestone that they've met. That just means that the advanced team, which got everything ready, is now ready for this crew right here that is driving on the way to the pad right now. But back to the note on the VA or on 39B and talking about the Artemis program, we have some video to show you about some of that training that happened last month. Teams are here. I hear that sound. That's the sprinkler system there, the fire suppression system activated as the Artemis mission emergency procedures during a series of integrated system verification and validation tests happened. Members of several teams practiced the process of getting inside and out of the emergency egress baskets and then exiting at the terminus area. And then once there, they got into an armored emergency response vehicle and then drove away from the pad to one of the designated safe site locations at Kennedy. Critical training for them that all astronauts do before they go on a mission. For more Artemis updates, you can scan the QR code on your screen that's coming up right there. Or you can go to the website, nasa.gov/Artemis-Roman numeral 2. And as we continue to make our way to Space Launch Complex 40, this is a live look as they are pulling up and going past Pad 39A. This is where all previous launches for SpaceX Crew launches have happened here at Kennedy Space Center. So today will be another first, launching not from 39A where they would have turned in and been there already. Now they're going over to the Space Force side and launching from Space Launch Complex 40. But what a great shot there, showing the venerable and historic 39A as they go past that pad over to the Space Force side.
That's amazing.
And you can see SpaceX working on their Starship launch tower just to the right of the water tower there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's neat to see a developmental program right next to one that is so operationally proven.
Absolutely. Great observation. And of course, SpaceX, a partner with the Human Landing System, going back to Artemis, will be helping out with Artemis 3 and getting our NASA astronauts onto the surface of the moon. Now they approach the beach side where the road goes right down the waterway. This is a nice shot of the Atlantic Ocean and the beachside road that leads to Space Launch Complex 40.
Absolutely beautiful. And this connection to the ocean is one of the reasons the Crew-9 patch also depicts the ocean.
Very nice. As we take in this lovely view, we also want to give a chance for, oh, nice wave.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
For the surfers out there, boy, that was a sweet one. Back to our crewmate here on Crew-9, Cosmonaut Aleksandr Gorbunov is Crew-9's mission specialist, a first-time flyer who studied engineering at the Moscow Aviation Institute.
Практически самое неизвестное, что сейчас у нас есть. Поэтому мы все время стараемся изучить этот космос как можно больше, изучить, как устроена Вселенная. Исходя из этих знаний, этих фундаментальных знаний, мы, может быть, получим в дальнейшем какие-то новые технологии. My name is Aleksandr Gorbunov, and I'm the mission specialist for NASA-SpaceX Crew-9 mission to the International Space Station. Я родился в городе Железногорске, Курской области. Это примерно в 500 километрах на юг от Москвы. Мне нравилась, например, биология. И когда я был совсем маленьким ребенком, я хотел быть биологом. Затем я познакомился с авиамоделированием. И после этого меня мысль о том, чтобы стать инженером, в частности, в космической отрасли, полностью захватила. И в старших классах я уже осознанно готовился. Я закончил Московский авиационный институт по направлению космические летательные аппараты и разгонные блоки. По образованию я инженер. Учась в институте, я также параллельно работал. И после этого я поставил себе цель попасть в отряд космонавтов. На это ушло примерно 10 лет. В 2018 году я был отобран в отряд космонавтов. Международная кооперация – это одна из самых важнейших частей при исследовании космоса. Мне кажется, что когда человек выходит за пределы земной атмосферы, то он становится не только представителем своего государства или своей нации, но также представителем всего человечества. Когда я учился в институте, то ходил в горные походы, в зимние походы, научился нырять с аквалангом. Но самое вдохновляющее увлечение, которое у меня сохранилось до сих пор, это парапланеризм. Это невероятное, непредаваемое ощущение, когда ты летишь, и тебя сопровождает только звук ветра. Но я думаю, это похожее увлечение. С каждым годом все выше и выше. Чем больше занимаешься парапланеризмом, тем выше получается подняться на параплане. Соответственно, следующая ступень — космос, но без параплана.
Minus the paraglider. Well, we saw some beautiful waves for surfing, and then there were some beautiful views of paragliding. I haven't been, but that looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's something that Aleksandr is very passionate about. Hopefully I get to give that a try with him someday.
T-minus 3 hours and 9 minutes, and there you see the access road as we're going towards Launch Complex 40. The lead vehicle, part of the security team that's leading the caravan.
That's right. A little bit longer of a drive than it is to 39A. Gives you extra time for your launch playlist.
There you go. And I don't know what the playlist is for the car this time around. Sometimes the astronauts, as you know, post it on social media. We didn't get one for Nick, but you know, it got me to thinking. Sometimes it's just nice to just drive and just have the sound of the tires underneath you. You know?
That is true. Though
I don't know if that's the case, but, yeah.
Today I know that they are listening to some tunes.
Okay, so it is a good thing to rock out and get the adrenaline going. That's
Absolutely.
certainly what the astronauts did on Demo 2 and many missions afterwards.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting. Some people choose to have some pump it up jams. Others really want to relax and just get in a calm mindset. And it's really up to the crew members.
So this is pretty cool, Zena, as you're driving up and seeing the rocket in through the front windshield.
Oh, yeah.
There you saw the MRAPs just off to the side. Those are the vehicles. In case there were an emergency egress, they would use the emergency slide wire chute to get down there and get in those vehicles. But this is a wider shot of Slick 40.
It's a beautiful shot.
It is a smaller footprint than 39A. Of course, 39A, a very large NASA facility that has a very long flame trench. This one a little shorter, a little smaller footprint, about a third of the total footprint, but all the hardware is there that's necessary for successful spaceflight. And today, the first time that we'll have a crew launch from this launch pad. And a lot of work, about 2 years worth of work, went into getting this pad configured and outfitted with hardware that can support a crew launch. And you need a tower, you need an access arm. So I want to give you a little closer look at what we're dealing with. You can see there's the entire complex. And if you look to the right of the screen, that's the launch tower. You see the elevators. Astronauts will be going into those elevator doors. They'll then go up to the top and pop out right here at the top of not the very top, but the launch tower level that leads them to the spacecraft. They'll walk in the direction of those chevrons into this crew access arm, where you see a couple of the advanced team members from SpaceX looking out the window, and what incredible views they have there as well. And then that crew access arm leads to the spacecraft Freedom. It is a larger white room than we are accustomed to seeing over at Pad 39A, but it is very capable with numerous improvements to the current system. And there it is, a look from the outside. Outside the crew access arm and the Crew Dragon that is atop the Falcon 9 rocket. A little wider look, and you can see all around the Space Coast as we have a beautiful day forming up.
And that Dragon spacecraft Freedom is looking good on top of a Falcon 9 today. Absolutely beautiful shot.
T-minus 3 hours and 4 minutes and counting. At T-minus 4.5 hours, we got a weather brief from the launch weather officer with the 45th Space Wing today. And though that shot looks beautiful there, we got a little blue sky mixed in there, there are some weather matters to talk about that the team is tracking. If you look here at the satellite view from the GOES satellite of Florida, you can see we've got there in the lower half of the screen, you can see the clouds developing and starting to push from the west towards the east. That is coming in our direction. That was expected, streaming some moisture over our area, according to the launch weather officer. It's all because of a trailing boundary in the wake of what was Hurricane Helene. It stalled out over top of us and has kind of concentrated that moisture over the launch site and staging areas. So here at the launch site, where the forecast is calling for scattered showers forming and pushing towards the Florida East Coast in the afternoon. Fortunately, our launch time of 1:17 p.m. Eastern time is early in the afternoon, hopefully before those storms start popping up and developing, but they are keeping a close eye on it. And as a result, our probability of violation at the launch site for today is 45%. That would mean a 55% go if you're a person who likes your glass half full.
I do.
And that's Cena. So we'll take that as a 55% go, and hopefully we end up on the good side of that. We're also watching the weather along the ascent corridor. That's a little more iffy even than the launch site weather, where the remnants of Helene have brought some precipitation and lightning over some of the areas up the ascent along the east coast of the United States. And this is important. This is something that the team is watching and they're tracking, and talk about why that's important when it comes to emergency egress.
Yeah, absolutely. Weather on launch day is a really interesting puzzle. And so not only the weather right here at the launch site matters, but all up the East Coast matters as well. And as Nick Hague knows firsthand, if you needed to abort and escape from the top of your rocket, your Dragon would come down on this launch trajectory somewhere on the east coast of the US, all the way up to about Shannon, Ireland. And so we really need to make sure that the weather and the wave heights are conducive to that being a safe place for a crew to land if they ever needed to.
So the weather in those areas is something, as you mentioned, they're watching closely. The conditions were moderate when they were forecast yesterday, but the team is watching. A quick note, Zena and I are listening into the weather brief that's happening right now. We're going to update you once that's complete. All right, I believe that was Launch Weather Officer Brian Cizik. Stand by. In the meantime, while discussing the weather, our crew, or Crew-9, is headed towards that elevator at the base of the launch tower.
Yeah, you can see them walking towards that elevator right now. I am sure they will take a moment to look up and really take in their rocket from the foot of that 200 and change foot tall rocket. You can see them doing the quintessential SpaceX flight suit lean back.
There it is.
The suit is designed to be most comfortable when you're in the seated position, so that
Not staring up at a 200 foot
exactly.
rocket.
Yes,
This
not,
is core
not
on
exactly
countdown.
ergonomic for
T-minus
these
3 hours. Crew have
operations,
arrived
but
at the pad
I
on time.
can't imagine standing at the foot of your own rocket and not stopping to take a look at it.
Isn't that something? What a view that we just saw there as they
No
were
kidding.
craning backwards. We call it the rocket recline.
The rocket recline. I love that.
And
Should
into
be
the
a dance
elevator
move.
they go.
I have not been inside this elevator, but I suspect they designed it similarly to the one at 39A. There is actually a button for space. There it is.
There it is, right on cue.
Yeah, I know which one I would choose.
Absolutely. Well, it's, why go to the 230 foot level when you can go to space?
Send it.
Send it, indeed. And there's the top, and that's where they'll pop out. And the crew, as we showed you in our little mini tour, will follow those chevrons on the ground, which are also there in white, high contrast with the black paint, so they can be seen in the case of an emergency egress.
Yep, that's exactly right. This launch tower is well designed for humans. It's part of the long process to get it rated for these crew members, Nick and Alex, today. And there's Luke Delaney, number 43. You can tell by his red name tag, a little bit different than the SpaceX ninjas.
Yeah. And there's some important differences between this crew tower. This elevator takes the crew all the way up to the level of the crew access arm, as opposed to at 39A, they have to actually go up a few flight of stairs.
That's exactly right, which is no easy feat when you're in a suit like this. So quite nice to just go all the way direct in your elevator.
Yeah. Direct flight.
Mm-hmm.
And the crew access arm at 39A actually, I understand, has an incline. So there's a little kind of coming up.
Yeah, that's right. It's a little bit different than 39A.
And here they come. Commander Nick Hague and mission specialist Aleksandr Gorbunov walking the crew access arm towards their Dragon Freedom capsule.
They are all smiles, and I can understand why.
With phenomenal views to either side of them, walking confidently and certainly anticipating these next few moments where they'll get into the spacecraft and get seated and strapped in.
There's Katie Bishop, who is in charge of today's operations here at the Cape as the closeout lead for the SpaceX team.
She handed a Sharpie to Aleksandr
This is
Gorbunov.
core on countdown. T-minus 2 hours, 56 minutes.
Another
Crew
one
have
of those
arrived
many
at the White
spaceflight
Room.
traditions, signing the wall of the White Room before you get in your Dragon capsule. And these will be the first signatures on the wall, unlike 39A.
Yeah,
which is
here
actually
we go.
full
They
of
get to be the
signatures.
first. Isn't that something?
Choose a good spot, Alex.
Yeah.
No pressure. Oh, yeah. Very nice.
Good. Boy, yeah. You went big, too.
There's only two of them. They can take up twice as much space as they would.
That's right. Nick is a lefty, apparently.
That's true. Strangely, the astronaut office has, I think, a higher percentage of lefties than most of the U.S. population.
How about that? Wonder why
Random
that
fact.
is.
I don't know. Who knows?
I
Don
try
had
to
it.
make some kind of observation of left hand, right brain, but I don't know if that would work. Well, look at this.
What a
Taking in that view.
Yeah, absolutely. I love nighttime launches. Looks really spectacular as the rocket lifts off, but getting to see this view taking in some final scenes of my favorite planet before getting in your rocket.
That's a great point. You walk down that crew access arm at night and it's just black, but during a day launch like we have today, I get beautiful vistas the entire way.
Absolutely.
But night is fun for people who watch launches.
Yes,
And it
yes.
lights up the sky.
Yep.
We've got a split screen now showing you the crew access arm, exactly where those astronauts are inside, and then our look inside it on the right-hand side. Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov having a little chat there about their final instructions to Ingress, which means just get inside of the capsule. And their signatures, the first two signatures on this wall that no doubt will be filled with signatures over the coming years as crews continue to launch from this now human certified launch pad.
That's right, the first two of many.
And we've got one already in the seat.
There we
Aleksandr
go.
Gorbunov taking his spot in what is typically the pilot's seat, but as the mission specialist in a crew of two, he'll be sitting there right next to Nick Hague, who now takes his kind of falls into it.
Yeah, so this is that was really funny to watch actually, Nick, because he is used to training.
Crew have ingressed the capsule.
Yeah.
Used to training in seat number 3, so the seat that Alex is sitting in. You saw Nick lean to the right. He's used to dodging location 8 where the displays are to the right to get around it. It's one of the many human aspects of training for something like this.
Yes. And while they're getting situated, just wanted to catch you up on the weather brief that we listened to. The launch weather officer, Brian Cizik, in this case, was observing a line of storms that are headed our way over Florida right now. They're coming up from the southwest, and that's what's contributing to our launch day forecast. Our winds are 10 miles per hour out of the south-southwest. Temperature is a nice warm 87 degrees. And we are 45, well, that should say 45% probability of violation, unless that's changed. I hadn't heard that it did.
It may be evolving as we speak.
It could
I'm
be.
not sure.
But the concerns that they have are cumulus clouds, flight through precipitation, and surface field electric rules. And so as you're looking now, you can see this is our satellite imagery updated from the GOES satellite live. And you can see from the southwest portion of the state of Florida coming up from the Naples area, that streaming moisture from a stalled boundary that's coming in our direction. Of course, the Cape is indicated by the little point that you see there, the little protrusion along the coast of Florida right there in the center. And so that is heading our way. And he is forecasting that to arrive in about an hour, and says from there, we're going to have spotty storms off and on. So you've trained for this mission, so you know this well. As we go along through the count, things really get locked in once you start tanking at T-minus 35 minutes. But at 2 hours and 51 minutes, they can afford to continue to walk along and go through the launch preparation procedures until that moment and see if this is going to be something that could be a problem for launch or not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think in spaceflight and in life, it's important to remember that being an optimist and a realist are not mutually exclusive. And so even as we are continuing to monitor this weather, we are going to progress in hopes of weather clearing and everything be come and go for launch. Of course, once we get to that launch minus 35 minute time frame, as we are making the decision whether to put fuel on board or not, that is a really important decision point.
And so our crew are now getting settled into their seats. It looks like Aleksandr has his 5-point harness on already, and moving through his procedures there.
That's right. Yeah, it's really nice to have some help from these suit techs strapping us in on the ground. The seats are in a slightly more upright configuration than they will be for launch, and so that helps you with ingress, with getting in your seats. But it is still difficult to strap yourself in. You can see Nick is taking care of his shoulder harness straps right now, plugging it into the center point where all 5 points of that harness attach.
It certainly is cozy and comfy, isn't it? I mean, they're elbow to elbow.
Absolutely, yeah. It's pretty roomy inside as spacecraft go. It's a really nice cabin interior. And both Alex and Nick, because they are in the center seats here, can have a longer footrest. The two seats on the exterior can only have a short footrest if you have a large seat bucket. So I'm sure they're grateful for the extra leg room.
Absolutely, because they're going to be there a while.
Uh-huh.
We got a 28-hour transit to the
That's
International
right,
Space Station once they lift off, and we've got another just a little under 3 hours in this position now. So
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, once they get on orbit, they can get out of their seats and out of their suits as well. But they've got a few more hours to go. And here, where you are not weightless, it's important to be not only safe, but also comfortable.
And I did double check the probability of violation. We still are at 45% probability of violation, so 55% go with the weather, and that hasn't changed. Though, just to briefly recap, there are a line of storms heading this direction set to arrive in about an hour. And Launch Weather Officer says they'll be off and on as they pass over the spaceport. But I have seen, it's rare, I think I actually only saw it one time, 80% no-go. And as long as it's clear right at T0, you got a hole in the clouds.
That's
and
right.
it's clear
You
enough
just
away.
need
10
one
mile.
window.
Yeah, that's all you need. Throughout the program, we've been taking your questions from our hashtag Ask NASA sites, which include Facebook, X, YouTube, and Twitch. Zena Cardman, NASA astronaut, has been taking those questions and enlightening those who are curious enough to ask, and we appreciate you sending those questions in. And next up, Zena, Craggy Williams asks, where was your favorite place to train?
Oh my goodness. You know, I love that we have so many different training centers. A lot of the training that we do is for the International Space Station. And we train all over the world, in Japan, in Star City, Russia, and at the European Space Agency in Germany. Most of my training happens at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, and same for Nick Hague, my crewmate there. I love the facilities that we have at JSC. One of my favorites maybe would be the Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory, NASA's NBL. This is an amazing 1 million-gallon swimming pool where there is a 1-to-1 scale mock-up of the exterior of the space station, and this is where we train for spacewalks in the EMU, the Extravehicular Mobility Unit. So that's a spacesuit, but different than the spacesuits that you see the crew wearing today.
You can't understate the size of that pool. You mentioned 1 million gallons. This is like a gigantic indoor lake.
It's humongous. It's about 40 feet deep, but it's such clear water. You can see all the way to the bottom. It's really hard to judge the scale of it. But I still remember the first time that I was submerged underwater in the NBL. You look down and your hands are in spacesuit gloves. And that was one of the first moments where things felt really real as a newly hired astronaut.
Right.
Another one
Did
of
you
my favorite
pinch yourself
places.
like in that moment?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely surreal. But yeah, what an amazing place to train.
Sorry, you were going to say?
Oh, my other favorite places to train include also the Dragon Training Center in Hawthorne, California, near Los Angeles. This is where SpaceX headquarters is and where actually Mission Control Hawthorne is. So the Dragon operators on the ground, in addition to our Houston Mission Control Center operators. And there in Hawthorne, they have a capsule simulator that is a perfect mock-up of this Dragon spacecraft. It's so real that I've heard crews say they are convinced that the side hatch is going to open, and their lead trainer, in this case, a person named Paul Weiss was our lead trainer for Crew-9. We're just convinced that Paul is going to pop his head through and say, okay, good job on the sim today.
I have heard other astronauts say the same thing.
Absolutely.
When they get in, this moment we're seeing right now with Nick Hague and Aleksandr Gorbunov is so familiar because of all that training.
Absolutely.
That the day, even the day of launch, that familiarity just takes over and says, oh, this is just the way we train.
Absolutely. It's so important to train in as high fidelity an environment as possible. And of course, there are some aspects of space, for example, the weightlessness, that are very challenging to simulate on the ground. But this capsule, it's really amazing to be able to train in a capsule that's such high fidelity and has exactly the same avionics and software, so that on launch day, you have been through this 100 times and the training takes over, you know exactly what to do.
That's the confidence you want to have when going to space, which, as we all know, many of us who worked in this industry for a while, it is a business that is not without risk. Our next question is coming from Kyla Ramsey Garza, I should say. She asks on X, my 6-year-old wants to know, what will Expedition 72 do for their research at the ISS? What kind of science?
Oh, there's so many different experiments that are on board or going to be on board. One of my favorites, I think, is actually ourselves, the human subjects. A lot of the research that we do on the space station is understanding what happens to people when you're in space for a long time. And that's because we're getting ready to go farther afield to places like the moon and eventually to Mars, where we will be spending longer and longer duration. That our body experience in space are very similar to populations on Earth.
Tex Freedom, I'm with you. Got you loud and clear.
Have you the same? Stand by for umbilical comm checks. C2, C3 for umbilical comm check.
C2's got you loud and clear.
We got the loud and clear.
Core has you loud and clear. Umbilical comm checks are complete. Report when you are ready for seat rotation.
Freedom's ready for seat rotation.
Copy. We will report when initiating.
Starting off with some comm checks there, which is a routine part of this procedure.
That's right. That was the core. His name's Shiva in Hawthorne, California, talking to the crew just before seat rotation here.
Well, Shiva is a former SpaceX broadcaster.
Yes,
Dragon, we are initiating seat rotation.
A good communicator.
Yeah, good to hear his
Ready.
voice. I said former. He may be current. I apologize. But he has done launch broadcasts, so I recognize his voice.
Absolutely. And this is someone that Nick and Alex have had the chance to do simulations with in Hawthorne before. So it's nice to have a familiar person on the team.
And there they go, articulating the seats into launch position. Boots up. And now this gives them a vantage point to work those heads-up displays a lot better.
Yeah, that's right. With the seats in the reclined position, it's a lot easier to see and access those displays.
Freedom, seats are in the launch position.
Copies.
And also puts them in a much better configuration for the G-forces that they will feel on launch.
If you just joined us, welcome to our coverage of NASA's and SpaceX's Crew-9 mission, launching from Launch Complex 40. On the left, our flight operations team from the Kennedy Space Center is orbiting Space Launch Complex 40.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for 4.100, Section 2, suit leak check prep.
Freedom copies. Go in Section 2 of 4.100, suit leak check.
And we are currently here on the split screen. With the left, you see the rocket, and on the right are our crew. One astronaut, one cosmonaut, getting ready for the second of 2 leak checks so far today.
Exactly. They did the first in the suit-up room at the operations and checkout building before they walked out and saw their families. The second one is because they have actually had a chance to open up the zippers of their suit. And we are now also zipped back up and connected to all of the systems of the Dragon. So their actual umbilicals connecting to the Dragon vehicle itself is one place where you might have a leak. So in the suit-up room, we've eliminated the variable of the suits themselves. And now we're just making sure that
Our care complete, ready for leak checks.
all of those interfaces with the vehicle itself are going to be good to go. And SpaceX will be...
Dragon, you are go for Section 3, suit leak check, including the command to initiate suit leak check.
They'll be actually getting telemetry from the suits.
Copies. Go in Section 3, suit leak checks and work.
Including exact pressures as these suits begin to inflate.
Right there on the heads-up display, they can see all the pressures of the suit. It's nice.
Actually,
or is it in the
we
iPad?
can't. Yeah, so neither. The operators in Hawthorne are monitoring the exact
see.
pressures of the suit. On the displays, you basically get a good or not good, a check mark whether your suit has passed the leak check or not. And so it's amazing to have those really competent operators in Mission Control Hawthorne who are looking at all of the detailed telemetry of the suit. But of course, because we have done so many leak checks at this point, we've spent a lot of time pressurized in the suit, you really get to know kind of the characteristics of exactly your suit, what a nominal rate of inflation feels like, what 2.5 or 4.5 pounds per square inch feels like. So you can see them starting to get jet poofed now as those suits pressurize.
Jet poofed.
Yeah.
Is that an official astronaut term?
It is now. And you can see the crew are, they tend to keep their hands up by the displays. And so that keeps your hands in a good configuration where you could actually interact with the displays if you needed to. But once the suit is pressurized, it's really difficult to move around. As I mentioned before, it's about the pressure of a regulation volleyball. So imagine yourself inside a person-shaped volleyball trying to move your arms and legs around. It's a lot of force to work around.
And you experienced that when you were doing your training, your underwater and beyond. Now, granted, that's a different suit. That's for your
That's true.
EVAs,
That's
but,
right. Yeah.
But it's still that pressure, and you can see the limited movement when somebody is in a pressurized suit.
That's right. Yeah. So this pressure that the crew are at now in their soft IVA suits, so launch and reentry suits, is about half the pressure of the EMU.
Oh, how about that?
They're going to about 2.5 pounds per square inch here on screen now. And for spacewalks, we go to 4.3 psi. That large suit, it looks really bulky.
And Dragon, no concern, closeout lead is just jumping in to double check something.
But it's actually incredible for mobility, having that hard upper torso and rotating bearings on the shoulders and the waist. We've got the closeout crew taking some pictures of Nick and Alex now. This will just give them some good verifications and the ability to send those pictures to a whole team of people who will take a look at it, make sure everything is good to go. And you can see in seat 4 and seat 1, we've got some extra mass simulators.
Dragon, we show 2 healthy suits.
Yeah, Freedom copy. 2 good suits.
And there's that core Shiva who is confirming 2 good leak checks. And there they go, deflating.
Dragon, with that, closeout team is going to be performing their final closeout steps and exiting the capsule. Please proceed to section 4 for side hatch close and report when you are ready for hatch closure.
Copy.
So at this point, we are preparing to close that side hatch where the closeout crew have been coming in and out of the Dragon capsule. Of course, we want to make sure that you have a good suit and a good leak check before you close that hatch, just in case somebody needed to help with your suit.
Make sure all that's in order, because when you close that side hatch, that is another big milestone in the march towards liftoff.
That's Freedom. We're ready for side hatch closure.
That's right.
SpaceX copies.
Currently scheduled an instantaneous window at 1:17 and 21 seconds Eastern time.
About 2.5 hours from now, we are making great progress. And there's a bit of buffer built into this timeline, especially for side hatch closure, because something even as small as a human hair can actually cause a slight leak when you do a pressure check on that hatch seal. And so we really want to take our time and get it right. But if we do see anything, there is still the chance to open the hatch back up, inspect it, remove whatever tiny thing might have been in the way, reclose it, do another leak check, and still launch on time.
And we've had that happen.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
You want a really good seal between you and space.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Hatch closure coming up next. This is really momentous, and even in the capsule simulator, it still feels like a really significant moment when they close that side hatch. You really feel like a crew in your spacecraft getting ready for launch.
Dragon SpaceX for a Tetris comm check.
Freedom switching.
And Core has you loud and clear. Tetris comm check is complete. Stand by for comm checks with the DC, MD, and LD in the launch configuration.
SpaceX Freedom, DC on countdown 1, comm check.
DC Freedom, I've got you loud and clear.
DC loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with MD.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, comm check.
MD Freedom, I've got you loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
MD Freedom, I've got you loud and clear, Dragon ground.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD.
And Freedom's LD on countdown 1 with a comm check.
LD Freedom, loud and clear.
And LD, I have you loud and clear. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground. Freedom LD on Dragon to ground with a comm check.
LD Freedom, loud and clear on Dragon to ground.
I have you the same, Freedom. Let's keep that storm salsa coming.
I'm with you.
And Freedom, with that, launch configuration comm checks are complete.
Copy all, Sheila.
So Zena, they just completed a number of communication checks with the crew, and there are a number of paths, right, that the launch team has in order to communicate with the crew.
Absolutely. There are multiple different communication loops to the Dragon capsule, and with multiple different ground operators. We have some people actually here in Florida with us. So that's the launch director, the mission director in Hawthorne, the core, who is like the Houston Capcom. And so we want to check all of these different communications loops with the crew before we close that hatch and lift off.
And just another quick update on the weather. Those storms are that we talked about excuse me, 45 minutes to an hour ago, are set to arrive here along the Space Coast. So we're going to be getting some rain in the area, not necessarily a problem at this stage of the countdown. But you can see it's all coming from the southwest. You can see the bubbling up of the storms there in the southwest portion of Florida, then moving across the state towards the east and towards the spaceport. So if you're in the area and you are camping out or getting ready to watch the launch, be aware that we got some storms in the area.
Definitely lots to keep an eye on. Any launch is a complex puzzle of many components, so this one will be interesting as it unfolds today.
T-minus 2 hours and 25 minutes and counting. I'm Daryl Nail with NASA, joined by NASA astronaut Zena Cardman, as we are walking you through the milestones as Crew-9 is prepared to lift off today at 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time. We are split screen on the right, Crew-9, A crew of 2
Dragon,
for this
the
launch.
closeout team is in their final steps in preparation for side hatch closure. Please stand by for that and the state machine transition to pad hatch closed and ensure all items are secure from now through launch.
So as you heard, the
Freedom copies all.
core, a man named Shiva coming to you from Hawthorne, is letting the crew know we're getting ready for those final steps before side hatch closure. And he let the crew know to keep all of their articles attached to them. That's because now at this point, once the side hatch is closed, if you were to drop anything in the capsule, we would need to open that side hatch back up in order to retrieve it. So all of their tablets and stylus, their neat boards are going to stay attached to their legs there. On the left, you can see the closeout crew removing some of the final pieces of protective material that you have over the side hatch seals as the crew ingress the capsule. You would not want to damage the seal or anything related to the hatch on your way in. And we remove that just before side hatch closure. The closeout team is now taking photos, all per procedure, so that we have something to reference in case the leak check is even slightly different than expected.
And we saw just earlier on the left-hand side of the screen, the flashlight, bright light, shining. Taking
That's
a close
right.
look at that seal.
Exactly. Doing some really thorough inspections here and photo documenting as we go.
Now's an opportunity to take some more social questions. Zena, what do you think about that?
I'm ready.
All right. Of course, if you want to submit a question, we are taking your questions throughout the broadcast. Just punch in hashtag AskNASA to following platforms, Facebook. So if you want to submit a social question as we watch the SpaceX team do the final maneuver of closing the hatch, just go to our platforms, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Twitch, and put in hashtag AskNASA. This question coming in from SpaceX's Haley Esparza. Zena, why are you so cool?
Oh my goodness, probably because I have such cool friends.
Oh,
Like
well
SpaceX Ninja number 34.
Is she out? She's not out there, is she?
Not today. She's not on the launch tower, although she has certainly been there in the past.
So she's
She wrote
somewhere with her cell phone sending in a question.
exactly.
We appreciate that, Haley. Thank you very much.
That's right. Yeah, she sent the crew off in the Teslas.
So you know Haley pretty well.
I know Haley really well. She has been an amazing support person for all of the crewed launches on the SpaceX Dragon capsule. really from the very start. I actually first met her at Bob and Doug's Launch 4 demo too.
Yes. Back in 2000, the test flight, the first flight of NASA astronauts on a SpaceX Falcon 9 and Dragon.
Yeah.
And it was the return, of course, of the ability for NASA to fly to the International Space Station from American soil.
Absolutely. Historic first in 2020. Doesn't feel like that long ago, but so much has happened since then when it comes to crew launches from Florida.
When you count Demo 2, 9 total at roughly 2 a year.
9 NASA missions, and SpaceX has also launched multiple non-NASA missions. It's really amazing to see how much diligence it takes to get this side hatch closed. A really meticulous process, but that is a very important piece of equipment, so we want to get it right.
And that side hatch needs to stay closed throughout the space flight for the 6-month increment.
It sure does.
All the way until, and it won't open again until they splash down in the ocean.
That's right. Yeah, its current planned next reopening would not be until February 2025.
So close her up good.
Yes, indeed. Number 11 there again is the closeout lead, Katie Bishop, who is keeping us on schedule. She's got a play-by-play of every minute of this launch countdown.
Keeping everybody on time.
Yes, indeed. Integrating many teams who are working together to make this launch happen today, including the crew inside the Dragon capsule, the closeout team in the white room there, as well as teams on the ground.
Which is quite the coordination because there are so many people supporting this launch today.
It really is, absolutely. I think that's one of the most humbling aspects of being an astronaut is realizing how many people support an endeavor like this.
As we watched the side hatch getting closed, note that we are at T-minus 2 hours and 16 minutes and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 from Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. To bring you up to speed, if you're just joining us, Crew-9 is currently inside Dragon Freedom. It's a crew of 2 today. Commander Nick Hague. It's his second flight to the International Space Station. And we also have a first-time flyer on this mission, Mission Specialist Aleksandr Gorbunov. So far, they have completed their comm checks and making sure they can communicate with the teams here on the ground. You see the technicians on the outside on the left screen working to close the hatch, but they got to make sure that seal is clean first and documented. And on the right-hand side, we see our 2 crew members. Their seats have rotated from upright to their reclined launch position, which allows them to see and access their display panels. They have also completed their suit leak checks to make sure their spacesuits are working properly, and we got a good confirmation of that. The closeout lead verified the cabin environment was good, and they all exited or I should say egress the spacecraft and began their procedures to close the side hatch of the Dragon spacecraft. If you've been watching us since we came on the air at 9:10 a.m. Eastern Time, I'm NASA's Daryl Nail with NASA astronaut Zena Cardman. And we're providing you audio commentary right now, but we will expand our live coverage around 12 p.m. Eastern, when we will come on camera and invite additional commentators to walk us through today's launch and ascent.
It's going to be a really exciting day here. We're a little over 2 hours from launch, and I am just so excited to be here with you, Daryl. This is a crew I know really well. I'm excited to watch them launch to the International Space Station today.
And we couldn't be happier to have you, Zena, here as well. You trained with this crew, you know this crew, and you have great insight, and we appreciate you sharing that with the audience.
Absolutely, yeah. These two especially feel like not only colleagues, but family and friends. We've been working really hard together for about the last year and a half, getting ready for this mission. And as we've said before, it takes a huge team of people to make a space flight like this happen. I'm proud to be one of them.
And Dragon, we're doing final photo verifications on the side hatch seals. We'll let you know when we're stepping into side hatch closure.
Freedom copies, thanks.
I think one of the hardest parts for crew at this point in the countdown to launch is just waiting.
Waiting.
Yep. Yeah, you'll see some crews play games amongst themselves, almost like road trip games.
Thomas Pesquet, he was, I remember it during his launch, and the number escapes me, but they were playing some games.
I remember training with Crew 4 and playing some word games with them. Where you,
yeah.
Try to guess your crewmates to guess the word, almost taboo style.
There are some waves from our crew.
Waving goodbye to their closeout team, and this is...
There they go.
And Dragon, side hatch is coming closed. Expect a state machine transition to that hatch close shortly.
A big moment during the launch countdown.
Freedom copies.
And that state machine transition that they mention is the flight computer state on board the Dragon. So that software is transitioning now to a state where the vehicle knows its side hatch is closed.
What does it feel like and what does it sound like when they close that hatch?
It's really difficult to hear the hatch itself closing. At this point, the crew are in their suits with their visors down and their earpieces are in. And so you really are getting only muffled sounds from the outside world.
Do you get like a little pressure change, you know, when you seal something up like that?
Yeah,
sometimes?
you know, not that I have actually noticed. Not significant enough to make my ears notice.
Okay. As they're working to secure that hatch, let's talk a little bit about the crew. And we'll start with Nick Hague. He's a U.S. Space Force colonel, and he is the Crew-9 commander today. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013. This will be his second space flight to the International Space Station. In 2018, he and his Soyuz crewmate experienced a catastrophic rocket booster malfunction after launch. They were forced to abort, but landed safely. 5 months later, Hague launched on another Soyuz and served as flight engineer for expeditions 59 and 60. He spent a total of 203 days in space and performed 3 spacewalks. The Kansas native is a test pilot and a distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the U.S. Space Force in 2021 and is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons.
Absolutely. Nick is an amazingly qualified astronaut. He is brilliant. He basically taught orbital dynamics actually at the academy. So he's quite smart, but he's also incredibly kind, a really thoughtful teammate. He's the kind of person when you're out doing some training in the field in a very cold winter environment who is up late boiling water so that his teammates can have a hot thermos before they go to bed.
Oh, wow.
Really thoughtful teammate. I absolutely loved
Dragon, we are commencing health checks for the launch escape system. Expect a momentary state change followed by a transition back to pad hatch closed.
Okay. Progressing along
And
nicely.
Freedom copies. Thanks for the heads up.
It's an expected call from the core, the communicator Shiva in Hawthorne. I really loved doing spacewalk training with Nick. He's a veteran of multiple spacewalks, and so for myself, a rookie of both spaceflight and spacewalks, it was incredibly valuable to get to train with him. He's the kind of person where if you have stored one of your bits for one of the tools in a difficult to reach location and you're sitting there struggling, he's just reaching over and helping you retrieve it and has put it on your tool before you can even think to complain out loud. Exactly.
Wow.
Great teammate.
And in this configuration today, he has a lot to be thinking about, to your point there. He is commander, but he's also does not have a pilot per se. He has a fellow crewmate, mission specialist, who's sitting in the pilot seat, but he's not trained to be a pilot today. So more responsibility is on Nick in this position.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's really in a mindset today of being both spacecraft commander and pilot. Aleksandr Gorbunov, our crewmate there, who would normally be sitting in the seat all the way to your left, is moved over. We specifically wanted him at the displays so that he can help Nick monitor and be value added as able. But it takes, as you know, many months of training to be fully qualified as a pilot. And so Nick is taking on a lot of responsibility today. He is well qualified for the job.
Speaking of Gorbunov, he is our mission specialist today and a first-time flyer. So Nick will get to see his reaction as he goes into space for the first time. He studied engineering with qualifications in spacecraft and upper stages from the Moscow Aviation Institute. Gorbunov graduated from the military department with a specialty in operation and repair of aircraft, helicopters, and aircraft engines. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, he worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
Alex is a brilliant engineer. He's always got really insightful questions. I've loved getting to train with him, especially because he has experience with other types of spacecraft.
And knows a lot about it.
Absolutely. Yes, he was trained in the mission specialist role. He was always very engaged, asking thoughtful questions, keeping track of procedures.
One note on that storm that we were telling you about that is now here. You can see it on your screen there, and the raindrops hitting the lens. So it is raining at the launch site right now. It's
some classic Florida weather for you.
It certainly is.
Nice and sunny before. Here we are.
That's right. And we're expected to bounce back and forth between rain and calm conditions, according to the launch weather officer. So this was not unexpected. It was part of the probability of violation. You can even see the raindrops falling past the crew access arm. So the pad's getting a nice dousing, a nice soaking out there, but not to worry about any of the hardware out there. The rain itself is not an issue. So far, there haven't been any lightning strikes detected in this cell that is currently over top of us, so that's good. But it is moving. It's moving about 20 knots to the northeast. It passed over Florida on its way to us. And we've heard the SpaceX launch director communicating with our launch weather officer for today, Brian Cizik, about this storm. So they've been tracking it the whole way.